Rebecca, coming to you first, obviously this is quite worrying news for the royal family. What can you tell us?
It is. I mean, the Duke of Edinburgh was taken into hospital on Tuesday, just 4 months short of his 100th birthday. Buckingham Palace have been at great pains to stress that it is precautionary, that he wasn't admitted as an emergency. He was driven from Windsor. He walked in. We don't know what is wrong with him, but we do know that it's not COVID, and he will be in hospital for a few days. He's been unwell, and that's all they've told us at the moment. But obviously, you know, any illness involving a man of 99 in any hospitalisation at the moment is some cause for concern.
I mean, 99, it's hard to get your head around, really, isn't it? But I believe he walked into the hospital. So he's been in reasonably good health lately, is that right?
He has. I mean, last time I spoke to some people who'd seen him, they said he was actually on sparkling form, pretty sprightly. But obviously, you know, I mean, at this age, you know, they can get a winter chill, you know, which can become more serious. I mean, as I say, the palace is stressing to me that it's not that his condition has worsened. It's really that it's just not got better. And they think, you know, with an abundance of caution, let's get him in, let's get him checked over, and hopefully he will be out in a few days' time.
Well, one man who knows Philip very well is biographer and former photographer Ian Lloyd, who has a book out about the Duke of Edinburgh this very week. Here he is talking through some of the standout moments of Prince Philip's life.
Prince Philip gave an amazing contribution, I think, to this, to the monarchy and to the Queen, a great help. Early on, when the Queen became Queen, he was the consort. He didn't have an obvious role. If you're the Queen consort, like his mother-in-law, Queen Elizabeth, there are certain things that you do that the king wouldn't do. So you divide the role between the two. When it's a queen like our queen, everything goes through her more or less. So Philip didn't have an obvious role. So he developed his own very, very soon after they came to the throne, and he took on over the years some 800 organisations, military and also various charities. The Duke of Edinburgh Awards Scheme, also World Wildlife Fund, and a whole variety of smaller charities, both here and throughout the Commonwealth. Over the years, because he worked for 65 years, from 1952 until he retired at the amazing age of 96. I mean, it's phenomenal when you think about it. But he retired in 2017, and by then he'd done over 22,000 solo engagements. That's obviously just him, as well as accompanying Queen on all her tours through the Commonwealth and around the world. I mean, they've been to nearly every country. There's only a handful of countries between them they didn't go. And on top of that, he did his own tours. There was over 600 solo tours that Philip made. So it's a vast contribution. It was estimated by Buckingham Palace that he'd done 5,500 speeches. It was all made easier by the improvements in the way we get around the planet. I mean, when the first tour took 6 or 7 months because they had to go by ship to Australia and New Zealand and Canada. They were great imperial tours in the 1950s. But by the 70s, it was possible to fly to Australia for the Queen to open the Sydney Opera House in virtually a weekend. So it was a lot easier. And Philip himself embraced the flying. He apparently Winston Churchill was horrified because he took to the helicopter, which Churchill tried to stop him doing. This was in the coronation year of 1953, and Prince Philip took to flying a helicopter to visit the troops that were coming over for the coronation. He got his RAF wings that year, 1953, and his helicopter wings 3 years later, 1956. And by the end of the 50s, he's also got a private pilot's license. So he flew 59 types of aircraft, which is quite a lot, and completed almost 6,000 flying hours. And he only retired, again, flying in 1997 at the age of 76. So that was a considerable career. He ended it a bit better than Prince Charles, who ignominiously crash landed one of the Queen's jets on a Scottish island, and that was the end of his flying career.
Richard, you must have a top 10 at least of Philippisms by now. What's your favourite moment?
Well, I've only met Prince Philip once when I was invited to a party at Buckingham Palace, and surprise, surprise, I wasn't invited back after writing about it in a newspaper diary. But Prince Philip sort of did the rounds, and he came up to us and he started grilling me, and he said, "Oh, which newspaper are you from?" And I said, "Oh, from the Daily Telegraph," thinking he would like that. And he said, "Ah, which department?" And I said, "Oh, the Social Diary." And he said, "Ah, the fiction department." I think he was joking.
Well,
we had a few run-ins with him in the past, but no, I mean, the thing that's great about Prince Philip is, in this day and age of political correctness and cancel culture and everyone afraid to say things, he's always been there with a, shall we say, a sort of ribald comment or a gaffe, as they're usually called, to try and lighten the atmosphere and I think make it much easier for the Queen as well. I mean, there's so many, aren't there, of things he's said over the years. I mean, one of my favourites when he was on a visit to Scotland and he got talking to a driving instructor, and he said to him, "God, how do you keep the natives here off the booze long enough to pass the test?" It didn't go down very well, but it was.
did it not? What a surprise.
I'm not sure I can top the fiction comment, honestly. But, I loved covering Philip's engagements when he was a working royal. Obviously, we don't see him making public appearances anymore since he retired. But one I do really remember was a garden party, which was at Buckingham Palace. And it happened to coincide with the exact date of his birthday. And as journalists, we were chatting to people afterwards, finding out what had been said. And it transpired basically that people had been advised not to mention his birthday in advance of meeting him. And a woman had actually bought him a present, and he had said to her, "Oh, can you just put it over there, because I don't want to lug it round the garden." And I can sort of understand, because, you don't want hundreds of people saying happy birthday to you when it's that's not meant to be what the day's about. But I think it does just kind of sum him up. He didn't really want to be the center of attention. He didn't want it to be about him. And, I think the other thing, it was his 93rd birthday, and just absolutely incredible that he was still carrying out official engagements when he was 93 and up until he was 96 when he retired.
Oh, Rebecca, you've met him a few times, surely. Has he ever cracked a joke at your expense?
Well, I do remember I can't remember what year it was, but I do remember on one occasion when he had been ill. I think he might have come out of hospital even, and we were on a job, and kind of we as the press chorus kind of shouted out, "How are you, sir?" And he turned around and was like, "Well, do I look bloody ill?" He was really snappy about it. But I quite like that. I quite like the fact that he's pretty defiant about it. He's known as the Iron Duke, and and rightly so. Although sometimes I think people forget about him, that there is quite a kind of serious side to him. He's very bookish. He's passionate about engineering and science. He set up the Duke of Edinburgh Awards. So we have these kind of funny stories, but there is a more serious side. I think he's got a kind of quiet legacy that people perhaps won't realise fully until he's gone.
Do you know the one word Prince Philip has said to me?
Oh, go on, do tell, Joe.
He said, "Ooh," when I was introduced to him and somebody whispered in his ear that I was the editor of Glamour magazine. That's my only exchange with Prince Philip.
But what do you think it meant, Joe? Ooh, was it great, or was it probably better than being shouted at? So
yeah. Well, I know all of us will be keeping the Queen and the royal family in our thoughts at this difficult time, and here at Palace Confidential we will have more news for you on this as it breaks.